Now, as already mentioned, I've basically described this, but your fight or flight response. We've heard this in chapter 3 whenever we talked about biopsychology. So, whenever your nervous system is responding to a perceived threat, your sympathetic nervous system, which is again under the autonomic nervous system, which is within the central nervous system, again within the whole nervous system as in its entirety. And so, whenever you have that fight or flight response, it's a set of, you'll notice, you can feel them for yourself, a physiological reaction that occurs when an individual encounters a perceived threat. And so, a very quick way to understand the fight or flight response, and I know that you can conjure up a memory anyways, but are you ever watching or you're scrolling through a feed on social media and then all of a sudden you're watching like a very calming video of like a car going up a hill and then out of nowhere this screaming demon pops up, right? And so what happens is your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, it responds to a perceived threat, and so you feel like an accelerated heartbeat, your heart goes into your stomach, there's a number of physiological responses. The adrenal glands will be stimulated, and so. But then, almost as soon as that jump scare occurs, you'll notice that your parasympathetic nervous system will come in. Excuse me. Yes, your parasympathetic nervous system will come in, and it will calm you down. Okay. So again, that's just some more physiological responses whenever it comes to fight or flight. So you have also, it's not just about neurotransmitters that are, there are particular glands and such as adrenaline, noradrenaline, and they cause a whole number of responses. So that's pupils dilate, your heart rate increases, muscles tense, and they may tremble, respiration quickens, as well as perspiration will begin. So let's talk about some of these stressors a little bit more in depth. So when it comes to chronic stressors, these are events that persist over an extended period of time, such as long-term unemployment. Acute stressors are brief events that sometimes continue to be experienced as overwhelming well after the event has ended. Okay, so some of these traumatic events that can be included in here that are, actual responses to things that can harm your health or well-being include exposure to military combat, physical assault, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, and car accidents. And so whenever individuals have a traumatic experience or experiences altogether, this can lead to the fruition of post-traumatic stress disorders. And so what happens when individuals have PTSD is it's a chronic stress reaction including intrusive and painful memories, jumpiness, an exaggerated startle response, and persistent negative emotional states, among other symptoms. Okay, so let's talk about life changes. Whether we like to, admit it or not, we're going to all go through life changes throughout the course of our lifespan. And so, no matter if it's good or bad, there is some sort of stress that's involved either as a side effect or directly as a result of a good life change. Okay, and it's self-explanatory for bad life changes. Nobody likes that inherently, but it may be necessary to get you to where you need to be. All right, so in the 1960s, Holmes and Rahe hypothesized that life events requiring significant changes are stressful, whether they are desirable or undesirable, so they created what's known as the Social Readjustment Rating Scale. Okay, and so when it comes to this SRRS, a scale consisting of 43 life events that require varying degrees of personal adjustment will rank, and there are points associated with each of these life events. And the accumulation of these points can definitely cause physical as well as mental health problems over the course of time. Okay, and so this was developed by asking 394 participants to provide a numerical estimate corresponding to how much readjustment they felt each event would require. So each life event has a score/life change unit, or LCU, from 11 to 100, representing the perceived magnitude of life changes that they involve. So a death of a spouse, of course, was ranked highest at 100, and divorce was ranked second highest at 73 points. Okay. All right. So here are some of the other life events and their point values according to the SRRS. Death of a spouse, divorce is already mentioned. Jail term, marriage in general, even though marriage is considered a positive life change, it's still a significant life change in general where there's going to be a lot of things accompanied with it that you're going to have to get adjusted to. So that could be stressful, combining your income, having talks about where you're going to live, how the space is going to be shared. There's just a lot of things that go into marriage that I don't think I could even describe within the time frame that we have allotted within 30 minutes or so. Otherwise, we may be here for a couple hours. But that's not what this chapter is focused on. Fired from work, retirement, pregnancy, death of a close friend, son or daughter leaving home, having that empty nest syndrome, trouble with a boss always causes stress. Mortgage or loan less than $10,000, that's whenever we see it a little bit lower, and change in eating habits. Okay, moving forward. Let's talk about daily hassles. So these aren't things that are necessarily life stressors, but they're minor irritations and annoyances that are a part of our everyday life. And so they can often lead to negative and distressed mood states and can build up and leaving us feeling stressed. So this is like our daily commute, especially if you have a long commute or one that's very busy, such as using public transportation. Okay, so daily hassles, they're minor irritations, but there's something that can build up and leave us in a negative mood. All right. Unfortunately, I don't know if all daily hassles are completely unavoidable, but we can make steps to alleviating them. All right. Now, let's talk about other stressors. So, job strain as well as job burnout. Whenever you're picking your occupation in life, there's going to be a trade-off. Whenever you have to at least be able to choose your sacrifice in life of, do I go to college and get a job that I want that may be either it is stressful or maybe not as stressful? Do I receive less pay for the less stressful job or receive more pay for the better job but it may be more stressful? These are all questions that you have to ask yourself. But whenever individuals are constantly exposed to unpleasant elements such as harassment, physical violence, constant frustration, this is not good. I'm telling you, stress and being overly stressed impacts your physical as well as mental health over the course of your career. So that's something to really be mindful of if you're wanting a long career in a particular area of study. If it's worth it to you to deal with those high stress, if you have a high propensity for dealing with stressful situations, I wish you well and think that you'll do excellent. But for other people, it can really be a detriment to your physical health over time. And who are we without our physical health as well as our mental health? That is just my opinion. You're welcome to have a difference of that ideology, but that's just my perspective. When it comes to job strain, this is the work situation that combines excessive job demands and workload with little discretion in decision making or job control. So this is associated with that increase of physical problems where you're having excess job demands on you. You're like a cog in a machine and you have little to no discretion or decision making with your job. Okay? So, like with being a college teacher, I do actually have a lot of discretion and decision making in my position. That's why I enjoy it so much. But if I were to go to the K-12 ranks, it's a whole different ballgame from what I have observed, in that they have a lot of expectations on them from their state, from their district, from their school, from their administration. And because of that, they have very little, if you really think about it from a macro perspective, very little discretion in decision making because they have to teach a particular rubric and things like that. The academic freedom is not much seen in K-12 as it is in higher education. So they do have little decision-making abilities within the moment of their day-to-day life, but when it comes to the macro perspective, I can see why that's a lot of teachers. The average, I don't know exactly what it is, but the last number I heard was like the average teacher lasts about 5 years. And that data may have changed depending on the time frame that you're looking at this video, but that's a pretty high burnout rate. Okay, and so when I say burnout, I mean just a general sense of emotional exhaustion in relation to one's occupation. All right, let's talk about stress and illness, psychophysiological disorders, stress in the immune system, the cardiovascular disorders, personality types, depression in the heart, asthma, and tension headaches. Now, when it comes to psychophysiological disorders, these include chronic stress and its sustained physiological reactions that lead to the wear and tear on the body. So, to give a definition to these disorders, it's the physical disorders / diseases whose symptoms are brought about or worsened by stress and emotional factors. So, this includes tension headaches, asthma, acne, hypertension, IBS, and coronary heart disease. So there are physiological disorders that are enhanced as a result of mental stress.